Hello everyone. I hope you are all doing well. Namaste. So let's do one more satsang. I'll start with a chant. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. So I hope you are all doing well. Today is Saptami of Chat. The month of Chat has started. Tomorrow is going to be Ashtami. And then after, I think, New Moon night, we'll have Navratri, Chaiti Navratri, Ram Navami. And then the whole month of ASHK will come. The whole month of ASHK is supposed to be a good month for austerity, spiritual practice, to get ready for the Chaturmas. So I think the next 6 months is going to be a lot of spiritual practice. That's how our Vedic tradition is set up. So today we are going to do some real work. See, I have these two papers in front of me because I'll be referring to some of those. So today we are going to do a case study, and it's going to be very interesting. So let's start with what we have talked about in the past, which is, our Sushma Sharir, our subtle body, is made of mainly 4 things: Man, Buddhi. This Man and Buddhi, these are individual conscious entities. Chit is the container. And Ahankar is this feeling of ego, feeling of I, which is an after effect. And the most important thing is Jagdamba, the mother. And then there are so many other things, the Indriyas, the senses, and there are many individual conscious entities inside our subtle body, but they are much weaker compared to the Man, Buddhi. Combined, these two, create this feeling of ego, I. Inside, and all this plays out inside Chit, and all these conscious entities are inside, are based, you can say, they have their ashray, they have their position, they're positioned inside the mother, Jagdamba. They're powered by Jagdamba. So, the path to enlightenment is basically based on these 3 key variables, or 3 levers. One is Man, other is Buddhi, and the third is Chit. So we can play with Man, we can play with Buddhi, and we can play with Chit. They are the 3 things. So when we play with Man, so what we do is we just color the Man into the color of love for God. That becomes bhakti, the path of devotion, bhakti yoga. When we play with Chit means we just purify the container. We purify the container. That's the path of Dhyan yoga, people call it, Patanjali's yoga, Kriya yoga. There are so many names, so many variations, but the essence there is to purify the Chit, and purification and concentration. And the third path is playing with buddhi, intellect. And that's the path of knowledge, path of knowledge, Gyan Marg, Gyan Yoga. But in all these three, eventually it's the mother. It's the mother who takes us there. We do the work. We can work with buddhi and do the work. We can work with man, do the work. We can work on chitta. But in the end, we don't have capacity to go there on our own. It's the mother in the end. See, Ramakrishna talks. I've said in the past that Sri Ramakrishna, I think, is the best teacher of Gyan Yoga, best teacher of Gyan Marg in the last 500 years, at least, or forever. His teaching is very simple, what he said. He said, मन को बुद्धि में लय कर दो और बुद्धि को आत्मा में. This is as simple as that. Means you dissolve, you merge your mind, your man, not mind, man, into your intellect, buddhi, and you merge your buddhi into atma. It's a very tricky situation. Why? Merging man into buddhi is what it means is you control your senses completely first, because senses are linked to man. So once you control the senses, then you control man, and then you totally control man. Essentially, you destroy your man. You go beyond any liking and disliking, and you are pure intellect. You are absolutely a rational person. And then you are suitable, then you are ready. But even then, the goal, what is the goal there? The goal there is Atma Gyan. The goal there is to know your soul, know the Atma. But then if we don't know something, how are we going to merge our buddhi into that Atma? See, it's not possible. It's not possible. That's why in the end, even on the path of knowledge, we do all the work, but in the end, mother wakes up and mother takes us there. There is no way out without the grace of mother. So you see, in the path of knowledge, one has to have absolute detachment, absolute control over senses, total destruction of man. Those rishis were not dummies. They used to get up early in the morning and go to forest, spend their whole day eating fruits and just controlling all their senses. It's not easy. So that's why it's very difficult to succeed on that path of knowledge if one is not monk. It's suitable, very, very, very suitable for monk. I mean, every monk should succeed. There is no reason for a monk to not succeed after giving up the world. But for worldly people like us, no, very, 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 very difficult. And that's the reason why Sri Ramakrishna established the dharma for path of knowledge, Jnana Yoga, that one cannot succeed in Jnana Yoga without being a monk, without renouncement. That was the only reason why Sri Ramakrishna took sannyas. There was no other reason. So we see there are three paths, three livers and three paths. But in the end, we need in every path the grace of Jagdamba, grace of Mother. You see, there is no pathway for karma. There is no pathway to succeed using karma yoga. So in the last century, people made a pretty big deal, and even now, about karma yoga. And by that, they have changed the definition of karma yoga. They have made karma as some kind of non-profit work, charitable work, philanthropic work, serving. But there is no pathway for that. There is no pathway to go from doing a selfless service work, like for example, working in a hospital and or working at a school or just helping people randomly without any selfish interest, and to go from there to enlightenment, there is no pathway. Historically, what karma constitute is all those three buckets that we talked about. Devotion, bhakti, and that includes upasana, Vedic upasana. The upasana, yajna, havan for devatas. And we should have no doubt that devatas can liberate us, because we don't know devata. Devi devatas are very, very, very powerful compared to us. If Yamaraj can teach Nachiketa, how to get liberation, Yamaraj can give us liberation too. So we should be humans. We don't know how tiny we are. I mean, that is our problem. So karma yoga has no pathway. The best we can do is using karma, benefit from doing a lot of unselfish work. It will accumulate good karma, and that leads to problems actually. That leads to problems. We see all the time, we see a lot of people here in this world right now, who do a lot of unselfish work, start doing a lot of unselfish work. They do all kind of non-profit work. Then they get trapped. They build this organization, start giving lectures, getting reward, travel. Getting enlightened, loving God is nowhere on their radar screen. It's very difficult to get out of a good situation. It's very difficult. So in many ways that karma was very relevant probably last century, more from the political, social reason. But karma becomes a distraction and an obstacle. Karma in the sense that we define in the modern ways. Sri Ramakrishna used to define karma as everything which is spiritual is a karma. Meditation, puja, jap, dhyan, sadhu sang, tirth. All these things that are spiritual in nature, with the goal, which is, at least the goal is spiritual, that is karma. Working in hospital 12, 15, 16 hours a day, that is very nice. One will accumulate a lot of good karma and eventually lead to some really good situation. But that's not a way to enlightenment, because that person is burning up a lot of prana. We need a lot of prana, we need a lot of that energy to break the bonds. See, in yoga, by yoga I mean Dhyan yoga or Hatha yoga, Kriya yoga, whatever you say. Yogis are not supposed to do a lot of manual work. Even there is a limitation on how much they can walk in a day. They are not supposed to walk for too far, because one has to preserve that vital energy. It's not easy. We need all that vital energy to dissolve. You see, I'm using that word dissolve very carefully and very intentionally, to dissolve the bondages with which we have been bound. So that's the reason why, we have to redo the thinking around, if karma is really the way we define now. I think it's not. And that's what our scripture says, and that's what people, successful people in the spiritual life, like Sri Ramakrishna teaches. See, this is the problem. This is the problem, that we right now have a lot of misinformation about spiritual practice, about spirituality in general, spiritual science, spiritual literature. What has happened is until 80s, even until 90s, and before internet, a lot of this spiritual knowledge, and I'm talking right now mostly in the context of India, the situation in India, but even also in the US, it was not widely available. Those books, obviously there was no internet or anything, those books were not widely available for common people. Mostly they survived, within the sampradayas, their different lineages. And Yeah, and some books, and even the books were not available. I remember in the 90s, I was kind of curious as a child, in yoga and all, but there's no way to know. I used to hear about there's this yoga school in Munger in Bihar, and I used to think maybe someday if I have few months I'll go there. But I'm talking about in the 90s, early 90s. And for an average person at that time in India, there was no way to get these information. And different lineages or different traditions, they guard these information jealously from other traditions and also within themselves. So what has happened is over like centuries, a lot of the most important information is lost or has been corrupted, either by chance or by intention, just to guard it jealously. And what has happened now in last 20-25 years, especially after internet, that all those information are bubbling up and they're spreading rapidly, and it's available to most people everywhere, and it's highly confusing and it's wreaking havoc, because people are getting all this information from everywhere and it does not make sense to them. And as a result of that, they are just losing faith in spirituality in general. And obviously they are losing faith in teachers and the traditions and the books, because it does not make sense to them. And it's not their fault, because it does not make sense. That's it. It does not make sense. Because people don't know what they're talking about. And they just talk about it, whatever they know, because the intention is not to teach people or to help people. Intention is very selfish, I'm sorry to say. And we have seen in the 80s, their gurus, and they want to accumulate Rolls Royce by reading a few books and then just telling people to do few things. They have no interest in making people go to moksha. There are people who read few, Kashmir Shaivism book and then start telling people upayas, and people feel good a little bit, and there you go. A cult is formed. That's the worst thing that could happen to Vedic tradition. Vedic tradition is not that. We know the very foundational science of this whole existence. That's what Vedas are. That's what the Vedas are. And here is the good news. The way science, especially science and technology, is moving, we are going to have a great time, because the Vedas are going to say exactly what's going to play out over the next 20 years. And I guess that was one of the fun trip for Sri Ramakrishna, we think it has been 140 years, but where he came from, from Pitarlok, 30 years there, here is 1 year there. It's only 3 years, 3 to 4 years there. So that's the reason why, when he came, he emphasized Vigyan. Go beyond Gyan. Because there's so much misinformation. And he obviously knew what's coming. We need to tell people the science, spiritual science behind why something has to be done and why it's beneficial to them and how it's going to help them and why it has to make sense to them. And that is only possible if people are shown Vigyan, people are shown the real science behind why something should be done, why it's going to help them. It's very difficult to do because it's not easy to get that knowledge. If that knowledge was in the books, it will be there, but it's not. It's not easy. It's very rare few who can get that knowledge, by spiritual practice. That still requires a lot of grace from God. So most of that knowledge is lost. Most of the knowledge is lost, and then people just have made it up. So today we are going to do a case study. And we are going to see how this is playing out right now. So we are going to do the case study on this Soham mantra. The Soham. See the Soham mantra meditation where people breathe in and breathe out. And it's a practice that is done in many traditions. It's a practice that is done in Kashmir Shaivism and many of the other sampradaya. There are so many sampradaya, right, in India they say they are not Vedic, they don't believe in God, don't go to temple. But when you really dig deep into it, there is essentially Vedic tradition and yogic tradition combined, and they are just putting that information out there and just saying that, okay, it's something different, but it's not. Sorry. But there's a lot of tradition who use this exercise, right? So as a breathing kind of meditation. And it's very powerful. It is very powerful meditation. So, I was watching this video of Swami Sarpriyananda. It's I think an old video of him giving a lecture on Kashmir Shaivism, meditation in Kashmir Shaivism. And that's an amazing video. See, I really a big admirer. I've learned a lot from Swami Sarpriyananda for 2 or 3 reasons. I think 3 reasons I would say. One is he's a teacher's teacher. So he used to teach teachers. So it's like when he's teaching something, he first really spends, I think, a lot of time, understanding those things himself. So when I listen to his videos, I'm pretty sure that I'm getting not the milk, I'm getting the cream from the milk. So it saves a lot of time, right? Number 2, he's a very good teacher. I think he used to teach kids in school, and he has a long teaching career. So he's a very good teacher, right? He's very good in explaining and very good communication skill. And third, I think he has a true intent, which is the rare thing. He truly wants to help people. He truly wants to help people. So I really encourage people who wants to learn the core fundamentals of at a fairly high level, but they are very, very distilled essence of Kashmir Shaivism. You should watch that video, about an hour and a half or so. I'm going to put that in the link in the description. And in that also, he talks about this Soham meditation in Kashmir Shaivism. And today I just came across this video from, there's a Vasant Lad. He is a Ayurveda expert, I think, in New Mexico University or somewhere in the US. And he had this very nice video, 7-8 minute video on Soham, the beauty of Soham mantra. I think I'm going to put the link, and you should watch it, especially last 3-4 minutes. But I would encourage to watch the whole 7-8 minute video. It's very inspiring and very nice. But definitely the last 3-4 minutes. And he is definitely a practitioner and an Ayurveda expert himself. And in that, he talks about how it works, Soham mantra. And you start with, you kind of measure your breath, 12 fingers from your nose tip to almost to the middle of your chest. And then slowly as you progress, the breath, that depth of your breath becomes shorter and shorter. And then in the end, it goes to your crown and you get enlightened. That's how it works. That's what he said. And I think he's not wrong. He's right. That's how it should go. But here is the interesting thing. It was Okay, I'll talk about that a bit later. So here is the interesting thing is, in none of these videos, they explain, okay, the mechanism, the pathways, like why doing that is going to help. They don't explain why. In any of the Kashmir Shaivism book, they won't explain why, because they don't know. See, it's very, 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 very difficult to know these things. I mean, in every tradition, there might be one or two person, maybe hundreds of years in the past, to know these things. And the person may have written down, must have said, these are the most secret things, don't share it. Or maybe they shared it, maybe it got lost. For whatever reason, it's not there. So what happens as a result? As a result, what happens is, people don't buy into it. I was thinking the same thing. I used to hear things like, from these teachers, श्वास की उत्पत्ति नाभि से होती है. Like your breath it starts from your navel. What does it mean? Right? I mean, we all know we breathe from our lungs, and when we are breathing in, we can feel our rib cage and expanding and all that. Our stomach is moving. Where does the navi come into picture? So see, in that video of Vasant Lad, I was not surprised at all. There was this comment or question from some YouTube user. Yeah, so I just copied what that person was asking. So I'm going to read it. When we say that the breath travels to the belly button, does that actually happen, or do we imagine it? So he's saying, so when we say that the breath travels to the belly button, does that actually happen, or do we imagine it? Doesn't all the inhaled air fill up the lungs and then get exhaled out? See, this is our normal understanding, right? Like when we breathe in, it goes to the lungs. That's what we feel. We don't feel air going to our navel. Who feels that? Raise your hand. Right? And then it comes out. When did it go to navel? Or where was the pull from navel? We don't know. We don't know. People just say these things, but they are not wrong. See, this is the real problem in spiritual teaching, spiritual literature, and right now, the dissemination of incomplete and faulty information. It's not the fault of the people who are the messenger. It's just not there, and it has been messed up, maybe lost. So we are, and this is also, so those are the reasons I discussed. Like maybe it's lost, maybe it was jealously guarded, maybe it was never communicated. But there's another reason for this. That is, the reason is the philosophical dispute between different school of philosophy, different lineages, different traditions, and people have undercut. In order to establish their philosophy and undercut other philosophy, they have surgically removed very, very important piece of information, from our scriptures and the understanding. And it has happened over thousands of years. So those most important information is simply gone. And as I told you, in 100 years, 200 years, the whole humanity will be lucky to have, I'm not kidding, will be lucky to have 2 or 3 humans who can really generate that information. And by generate, I mean they have to do intense spiritual practice. They have to have a very high starting point, and then they need to have grace of God. Very difficult, very difficult. Very difficult for that information to come by. So that's the problem, but we'll fix it. Okay, so here is. So let's do this case study, right? So we are going around. People are going around different tradition, Kashmir Shaivism, different yoga school, all kind of cults, sampradaya, do this. Soham mantra, breathe in to your middle of your chest, 12 fingers, and breathe out, produce the sound. They don't explain pathways. And when people listen to it, dumb people like me, they say, श्वास की उत्पत्ति नाभि से होती है भाई, बताओ, how does it happen? I don't feel it. See, this is a case study of current situation in spiritual teaching in general. So let's solve this situation right now. So first, to the very beginning, we have to go at the very beginning. How does the breath work? How is the breath started? So we have to do one very crucial thing. We have to completely, when we are talking about spiritual thing, we have to completely get rid of our physical body and the idea of physical body system, the heart, physical heart, blood, lungs, all those things. We have to completely get rid of it. Because it's a two different system. It's a Newtonian physics and it's a quantum physics. This physical body system that we have, lungs and the heart pumping blood and all those nerve and brain, it's a Newtonian physics. It has its role, but we are going at a much deeper level, at a much more fundamental level, which is subtle body. It's our Sushma Sharir. So how does the breath get produced? So because we have just, we are not going to look at our physical body. We are not going to talk about phrenic nerve. We are not going to talk about diaphragm. We are not going to talk about any of those things. Then how does the breath work? How is the breath coming in and going out? See, this is a very deep problem. Why? Because here we see the philosophical schools have done a big damage, big irreparable damage. I think all of you have heard Sarvam Khal Vidam Brahma. Sarvam Khal Vidam Brahman. This whole universe is certainly Brahman. There is a word after that. Tajjalan iti shant upasit. Tajjalan. The non-dual Vedanta school, they have deleted, erased, surgically removed Tajjalan. The meaning of Tajjalan is absorbed and breathing in that. That means when they talk about Sarvam Khal Idam Brahma, Tajjalan. So there is after Brahma, there is something absorbed and breathing in that Brahm. That is Shakti. Brahm and Shakti Abhed. That is the Vigyan. That's the science of Sri Ramakrishna. We can't delete that. We can't erase it. That is not acceptable. It has to change. We do the same thing. We go to Nastya Sutta. We go to the number 2 mantra of Nastya Sutta. I'm just going to read it. It's an English translation, may not be perfect. Then there was neither death nor immortality, nor was there then the torch of night and day. The one breathed windlessly and self-sustaining. There was that one then, and there was no other. That one was Mother Jagdamba. And she was breathing. Jagdamba breathes. I'll give you one more. Go to Yog Vashisht. I'm going to put the link in the description. Yog Vashisht is explicit that it's the Jagdamba who breathes. It's not only Brahman, it's Brahman and Shakti. Okay. So that is so we got clear now. So who is breathing? It's the mother is breathing, right? All right. So now we see Now we have to go back to what is happening to this navel, श्वास की उत्पत्ति नाभि में होती है. The breath originates in at the navel. So now we are going to yoga, right? And the subtle body. So let's look at the three lower centers. The name of it, Mooladhar, right? Swadhisthana. What is Swadhisthana? Swadhisthana. That's where that Swa, that Atma resides. And Manipur, you know what Manipur is? Why it's called Manipur? That's where the money is. That is the head. That is as far as one can go. So the problem right now for all of us in this realm is we are kind of locked. Our soul, Jagdamba, is locked in those lower three centers. And that's why when mother is breathing, that's when we breathe. That's when the air gets pulled in. And when the air is getting pulled in, it is getting pulled into two channels. One is obviously going to our lungs, physical body, and then air is also going to our subtle body. So when we Ayurveda, when you hear Vat along with Pitta and Kapha, that Vat is the air that is being breathed in or whatever, into our, you get the point, in our subtle body. So that's that Vat, that wind that moves. And that Vat moves through that subtle body, different Nadi system. And that is, both that movement is driven by mother, where the mother is situated, right? So most of the time you will see, that's why I call Swadhisthana, the second chakra, the second from the bottom. That's where it is. That's where that's as far as the wind goes in the subtle body. So then why do they say Manipur chakra starts, the breath starts at the navel center? Because that is a result of some already spiritual practice. Those yogic school, those cults, different sampradaya, they want their aspirants to start from there, from the Manipur center, from the third center, and it requires quite a bit of practice to get to Manipur center, to the third center, because if someone is not there, it's a lot of work to get to Manipur. And the problem is, in our subtle body, there's a big barrier. There's a big barrier between Manipur and Anahat center. And crossing that is the biggest battle. See, we call Triloki, right? So I'm going to reveal a lot of secret today, maybe, who knows. So when we say Triloki, that means there are three lokas. Those three lokas are right here. And those three lokas are three centers below the Anahat center. So when Mahasarda was asked, where is Swarga and Narak, she said, everything is right here. No one is going anywhere. So that's what she was saying. That was saying that if one does not cross that big barrier, one stays right here. And right here we have Narak and Swarg and this Prithvi. So what is happening here? So in the Soham, okay, so let me add this tip quickly. So the best way and the fastest way to go from Mooladhar to Swadhisthana and Swadhisthana to Manipur is brahmacharya, celibacy, because Mooladhar and Swadhisthana are very small centers, so they get filled up pretty quickly, and mother automatically moves to Manipur. And when mother moves to Manipur, then one can start like real hard work to cross that big barrier. So the point is, so I've explained what the breath is, what the origin of the breath is, why all the misinformation, because there is no truth. You see, there has been surgical removal of very, very important information just from the different philosophical point of view, right? Second, We have lost the design of subtle body. I mean, Ayurveda has lost the design of subtle body. I haven't come across any book, any teacher who can tell me what's the design of the subtle body. I all understand, everyone understands Ida, Ida Pingla, and everyone is looking at the scan of brain and brain stem. No one has found anything, right? Those are the problems. But now we know. It's the mother who is breathing, mother who creates the breath. And this is the final point. That Soham is basically just an imagination. See, every practice that we do, all the three levels that we talked about, Gyanmarg, path of yoga, meditation, and devotion, bhakti. And there's other one, fourth one that I haven't talked about, which is mostly Tantra or Kashmir Shaivism. So fourth one is actually a lot more dangerous because there we are trying to play directly with the mother. So see, when mother gets mad, mother can really slap the child. And that's what happens in most cases. That's why it's very dangerous. Even Hatha Yoga, you see Hatha is like pestering. One pesters, mother to help. It's good to please mother than to pester mother, So anyhow, so in all these paths, let's say 4 paths, including Tantra, what every path is trying to do is cross that barrier, and cross the barrier. So when we do Soham, see, mother is probably at Swadhisthana, right? And or maybe at Manipur if someone has done some practice, third center. And when we imagine that we are breathing till the middle of our chest, we are creating a situation that by imagining, we are forcing, we are kind of pestering mother to come to the fourth center. That's what is happening. It's not that easy. It takes a long time. And that barrier is not an easy barrier. That barrier needs to be cleaned up. But it's a reverse engineering. And people say, oh, I'm feeling breath going to heart center or going to my throat center. Don't give up to those ideas. It's not possible. Even when people go to Nirvikalp Samadhi, what Sri Ramakrishna is saying, that all one can say that it adjusts. No one feels. It's a much later stage that, very, very advanced stage, even after Samadhi and all, that people can feel the prana flowing through their different nadis and centers. It's not it's a very extremely advanced and very, very rare, very, very, very few people can experience that. So all this is misconception. It confuses the hell out of people, discourages people. People lose faith, lose interest. They just don't find it convincing. But we are going through a case study, right? So we saw the problem. We saw the real solution. Why people are not talking about it? Because they just don't know. It's not their fault. But Soham is very, very powerful. But in the end, it's also a reverse engineering. It's no different. It's no different than doing a japa and imagining one's Ishtevta's picture in one's heart. It's no different. See, so let's talk about the result, right? So let's say one crosses it. If one manages to cross that barrier, goes from third center to Anahat center, what happens? What happens on these 3 to 4 paths? So on Gyanmarg, on path of knowledge, that's when, you see, the fourth center is very, very big compared to third center. So think about a fish which has been swimming in a swimming pool, suddenly is placed in a very big pond. The fish will feel a sense of freedom, which is much bigger, in magnitude. Or think about a dog which runs in a very big backyard. Suddenly the dog is sent to a very big park, right? The dog can run in any direction, feels great, joyful. That's Brahmakar Vritti, still fully inside. It's very fully inside the body. Yeah, but it's a great freedom compared to. So that's why it's a vritti, which is Brahmakar. That means one enjoys that freedom, which is kind of copy of that ultimate Brahmgyan. But once become very clear that one is not body and mind. So see, when Sri Ramakrishna says that when one goes to the fourth center, I don't know Bengali, but it says Chaitanya ka janm hota hai. I mean the Chaitanya is born. I mean one feels like a conscious being, not body or mind. So that's kind of a gyan. That's where. So nowadays, Gyan Margi, they define that as a Gyan, which is not wrong, it's not exactly a Brahma Gyan, what Sri Ramakrishna says, that without having a Samadhi, Thik hoy na, that means one does not get it properly. But fourth center is a good, one is definitely not feeling like a body, one is pretty sure that one is not body and mind. Bliss is not there. I mean, bliss is there, but the full bliss of Brahmagyan is not there. But it's much, much better. Much, much better, right? So that's what happens there. I think in the Bhakti Marg, one sees like tremendous flow of light, because what happens is the plumbing. I'll talk about all this later, but the plumbing of the fourth center is very different from the plumbing to the third center, all the bottom three centers. So when one crosses that barrier, one feels like this flow of light. Sri Ramakrishna says, okay, one becomes surprised, like, what is this? What is this? And then one starts to see a very nice and bright image of whatever they were imagining before as a meditation. It goes, on from there. On path of yoga, like Kriya Yoga and all, mother becomes very active, and at that point one knows beyond any doubt that it's the mother who is moving the body and everything, and one is not that body. And mother kind of, a lot of action in the body starts to happen automatically, because mother is trying to go from fourth to fifth to sixth to seventh. So that's what happens on the path of meditation and Kriya Yoga and all. But there is a lot of work left after that. But the point is, because that big barrier is crossed, after that it's kind of a straight path. It's still a lot of work. I'm not trying to make it sound easy, but that big barrier is crossed. So what is the result of this case study that we did on Soham? I mean, we can conclude 2 or 3 things. One is, a lot of real, precise information is right now missing, which creates confusion in people's mind. People don't buy into the idea. And second, a lot of this confusion or missing information is a result of intentional erasing, creating philosophies which are maybe far from the truth, or just making things up. Sometimes people just make things up and just say things. But in general, it leads to it's not very convincing, a bad outcome, but not bad outcome. People just don't buy into it. People just don't do it. It's because, see, if something is not truthful, if something is not true, it does not have a power to convince anyone. And there is some power that comes from being truthful. The truth has its own power, because that power is the power of God. So if it's not true, it's not going to stick. So slowly, and so the bigger point is, slowly, we need to clean up. By we mean like anyone who is a spiritual, who is involved in spirituality, need to clean up. There needs to be a big purge in spiritual information, which is out there, because a lot of misinformation is out there, and I think Sri Ramakrishna has left pretty much a lot of right information, but it's kind of in a in a clue form. It's not well explained, but it's all there in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Everything. M was amazing. M was not ordinary, the author of the Gospel. M put everything in there. Just did not explain it because he did not live long enough, and maybe someone else should have explained it, who probably did not understand whatever. I don't know the reason. All right. So we'll do, so what we learned was, mother breathes, when we are trying to do Soham, effectively it's a reverse engineering, just like any other path. We are trying to make mother go from the third center to the fourth center if she is at third center. Let's say if she's in Swadhisthana or Mooladhara, it's just not going to work, because a lot of cleaning of the chitta needs to happen to make it easy for her. One has to clean the traffic before the president can go rapidly to the destination. And this is just an example of how people get confused. श्वास की उत्पत्ति नाभि में होती है. यार कैसे होती है श्वास की उत्पत्ति नाभि? मैं तो लंग्स फुला के सांस लेता हूँ. See, this is the current situation. But maybe, who knows, maybe this will change. All right, so that was something interesting. Now I'm going to talk few things quickly, and then we'll close today. See, this world that we live in, and Sri Ramakrishna has proved it, and Ma Sarda has proved it, and they have left a lot of clue that we'll go through over time. But this is a sentient virtual reality which is playing out in another lok, in like Pitar lok. And that is exact description of that is in Upanishad. So when something is inside a system, inside a game, let's say video game, or let's say an animation movie, Toy Story animation movie. So the toys who are there in that Toy Story animation movie, their understanding, and let's say they are all sentient, right? Thinking like us. Their understanding of something is going to be, 1 degree or many degrees lower than like us, because we have produced, we have built that system, we have built that animation movie, or we have built that video game. So that's why to them something will look very paradoxical. They would not understand it because they don't have the complete information about what's happening. But to us, the creators of that movie or that game, for us it will not be paradoxical at all, because we have, we understand what's going on. So, I'm going to list some of the very interesting paradox, which is very, very surprising. So I'm going to talk about two of them today. I'm not going to describe it, I'm just going to mention it. Okay, so one I have talked about it a little bit in the past. One is about the karma, theory of karma. So see, the paradox is, people say everyone has a free will, people think, but then religious people say, spiritual people say, you have no free will. Everything is God's will. Then how does karma work? Because everything is God's will, then why should I be responsible for my action? God should be responsible for my action. So in simple terms, karma theory should not work, if there is no, if there is no free will, right? If everything is God's will, then karma theory should not work. That's the paradox. But here is the thing. So they'll say if karma theory to work, everyone has to have a self-will, right? Otherwise, they cannot be held responsible. So the paradox is, the karma theory, the theory of karma, will work only if every person, every being in that system has no free will. See, it's a very radical, paradoxical statement. Karma theory will work only if there is no free will. Okay, that was one. Second was, see, this is the path of knowledge. The path of knowledge, non-dual Vedanta. Basically the doctrine of path of knowledge, Gyan Marg, especially non-dual Vedanta, is that ignorance is the problem. We have forgotten, we are ignorant about our true nature, and the knowledge of that nature will give us freedom, enlightenment, Satchitananda. And there is only one consciousness. There is one being. Actually, that use of one is wrong. It's a non-dual does not mean one. But at least what they claim is, they claim that there is only one consciousness. There is one thing, which is wrong to say. It's a one. They should say there is a non-dual thing. There is non-dual consciousness. So, and there are no individual consciousness of a Jeeva. So, is that clear? So, for that system, let's say the doctrine of ignorance and knowledge to work, they say that it's a non-dual consciousness, and that is there's no separate consciousness for Jiva. So, me and other humans here around there, they don't have separate consciousness. And here is the paradox. See, the doctrine of ignorance and knowledge and getting enlightened by just getting knowledge will not work if there were no separate conscious jivas, like in the philosophy of Sankhya. This is a very radical thing that what I'm saying, and I'm going to flush it out later. But that is not possible. That framework, that ignorance is a problem and knowledge is the solution, and that's how we are going to, one can get enlightened, and at the same time there is that non-dual consciousness. There is no individual conscious Jiva. That is not compatible. Both of them cannot happen together. For one to happen, that means for the knowledge and ignorance framework to work, there has to be individual Jiva consciousness. What I'm saying is something very, very different, but it has to be, and I'll flush it out in future. What it means is eventually that there could be, in very simple terms, what it means is there has to be many conscious Jivas which could be part of a bigger Jiva, and which could be part of even bigger Jiva, and part of even bigger Jiva. So what Sri Ramakrishna has shown, he was shown that's what he said, right? Shown in a vision that mother was giving birth to a lot of Jiva, and then she was gulping them back. Everything was coming out of mother and going back to mother. Non-dual Vedanta, but the way it is right now, and the knowledge-based system, knowledge and ignorance framework, will work only in that system where mother is giving birth to smaller, conscious beings. That's the only system where it will work. And that is why Sri Ramakrishna has emphasized time and time again that it's like a bale fruit, right? You have to take everything. You cannot just take the cover. You have to take the flesh and the seed. That means you have to take Jeev, Jagat, Brahm all together. Otherwise, that system will not work. And I need some time to flush it out, probably half an hour or 1 hour. But when we go through it, it will be very interesting. One final thing I'll say today is, the biggest problem for us, individual like humans, is our ego. We think we know everything. We think we know everything. And we have this ego that, okay, we are going to figure out the whole entire universe, everything. I find it funny. I really enjoy the last 2 mantras of Nasti Sutta. I'll just read that and I'll close with something very interesting that Sri Ramakrishna said. So I'll read those two. English translation may not be the best one. So number 6 is, but after all, who knows and who can say whence it all came and how creation happened? The gods themselves are later than creation. So who knows truly Whence it has arisen, no one knows. Number 7. Whence all creation had its origin, he, whether he fashioned it or whether he did not, he who surveys it all from highest heaven, he knows, or maybe even he does not know. See, I find it really, really, really interesting. So here is the final thing. So one day, M, the author of the Gospel, he was asking Sri Ramakrishna, they were talking, and Sri Ramakrishna was probably talking about avatar and how avatar works. M told Sri Ramakrishna that you, Sri Ramakrishna, is a window in a wall through which one can see as far as the infinity, like you can see as far as very, very, very far across the wall, because window is that avatar who can tell what is on this side of the wall and what is on the other side of the wall. And this is what Sri Ramakrishna responded, not to infinity, maybe just few miles, See, the humility and the truth. It's exactly 6 and 7 mantras of Nasti Asutta. Because who can say what is beyond that 3-4 mile? Only the one who does not know would dare say that one knows everything, one knows to infinity. The one who knows would not say that one knows beyond 3 to 4 mile. But this is our ego, our human ego, and that's the worst thing we can do to ourselves. That story that Sri Ramakrishna used to say, that an ant goes to a hill of sugar, and picks 1 or 2 grains and says, okay, I'm going to come back and carry the whole hill. That's our situation, and that's our biggest problem. See, today, I'm just engaging my buddhi. See, in our antakaran, we go back. Man, buddhi, chit generates ahankar and the mother. Today, I'm in a mood to just engage my buddhi. All right, so I'll end it here. I'll do a chant and we'll talk again. In few days. We have some work to do. We got a lot of work to do. All right. What should I chant? Let's chant that Purnamada again. That's the Isha Upanishad mood. We are in a mood to work today. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnas Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. All right. I hope you are doing well. Take care. I love you all. And we'll talk again after a few days. Okay then. Bye. I'll end it here. Bye. Let's see if it can work.